So I'm Shaheen. That's how you say my name. I'm the owner of Mindful Changes. I'm a mindfulness meditation teacher, and I work with parents, teachers, children, and caregivers. So before we get started here, let's start with a land acknowledgement. It is with gratitude and respect that we acknowledge that we live, work, and care for our families on the traditional and unceded lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations people. Let's arrive here together. Some of you later might be watching this on YouTube, and if you are, just allow yourself for the next hour or so to just be here. Taking that deep breath in, I invite you to take that moment, that pause right here, and maybe just check in with yourself. What's the weather like inside you? Outside, it's a bit cloudy and rainy. What does it feel inside you? As you sit here, check in with your feet, grounding them on the floor, keeping your spine relaxed but erect. Maybe just bringing the chin down a little bit, because when the chin is up, it's our thinking mind is active. So when we're being mindful, we just bring down the chin a little bit. Notice your breath. Let it be fluid, smooth, relaxed, easy, natural. Your body knows how to breathe. The goals for our time together today is to offer you a Cliff Notes version on mindfulness, bring some awareness of stress in our lives, stress on the brain, how it truly affects our parenting, and I'll offer you some mindfulness practices that we can start practically using right away. Okay. So mindfulness has become a buzzword. Am I right? You've all heard of mindfulness. If you haven't heard of it, put it in the chat box. But what is it exactly? Does it really mean sitting on a cushion and not thinking? Can we really shut our minds down so that we're not thinking? Is that even possible? Some may ask, is it helpful at all? How can mindfulness really be helpful when I'm dealing with so many complex issues, right? I'm dealing with children and all their different challenges. I'm juggling multiple demands. So how can it be really helpful to me? And you might have seen, and I'm sure around Christmas time, you will see all those mindful coloring books out at Indigo and Chapters again. Is coloring really helpful? Okay, can it help? So if you do have a mindful practice, if you do have a solitude practice, just put it in the chat. I'd like to know. Okay. We know that there are so many magazines. You go to Shoppers Drug Mart and there are mindful magazines all the time. It's mindful eating, mindful money, mindful and body, the mindful revolution. It's being touted as the next best thing, right? And you often hear people that you might be talking to, you might be expressing something to them, and they'll be like, just be mindful, just let it go. Am I right? How many of you hear that all the time? Just let it go. Is it really that easy to let it go? Mindfulness in the mindfulness world is seen as simple, but not easy. Okay. Oh, you practice deep breathing and counting. So with counting, for example, it might be, okay, I'm going to count from 1 to 10, or I'm going to count from 10 to 1. And I'm assuming that's what you mean. But if it's not, let's talk about it a little bit later, because we can open up the lines here and just communicate with each other and maybe share with each other our mindful practices. Okay. So you will hear, let it go. Don't overthink it. Can the mind really stop thinking? The mind thinks the way our mouth makes saliva. Can you stop that? So mindfulness is, how do we bring it together so that we have a choice? Okay. For some of us, mindfulness can be life-changing. For me, it was. Okay. I went through a really harsh divorce. I have two children, one's 16, one's 21 now. And both of them suffer from anxiety. And I was in that constant rushing around mode. I love my kids to death. I would stand in front of a bus for them. I would do everything for them. But was I really present? Right. And one day my daughter said to me, Mom, you don't seem really happy. I said, are you kidding? I'm happy. 80% of the time I'm happy. And they're like, no, it's about 20% of the time. And when we talk to you, you're constantly doing something. So that made me stop in my tracks. Okay. I had a meditation practice where I was meditating every day, ever since I was young, because my mom was a meditator. But mindfulness during the day, the other 23 hours of the day, where was I? Where was my mind at? My mind and body were disconnected. Okay. So for me, this mindfulness really brought a shift. And personally, for me, I started practicing my own mindfulness, and I noticed a shift in my kids. And then that aha moment kicked in. I was like, that's interesting. This works. Okay, so I hope that little piece will give you some hope that there is hope. Okay. Mindfulness, the real definition of it, John Kabat-Zinn quoted it, coined it when he came from the East in the 1970s, is paying attention. And if you can leave with anything of this definition, paying attention without judgment, with kindness. So there's an 8-week course that I do on mindfulness. And the first week is just about how we pay attention. And then the second week is just about judgment. How many times do we go through our life, through our day even, and are always judging, oh, the weather is nice, the weather is not. We don't complain about gravity, but we complain about the lineups in the grocery stores. We complain about how our shoes may fit or not fit, the backpacks on the floor, or this is good, this is bad, this restaurant was good, this wasn't good, food was good, this was not. Just notice that inner mind working. Just that act of noticing will bring that pause to you. Okay. And then the other part of it is to bring kindness. So you hear a lot about self-care, and that is a real thing. So you notice kindness, because when we're being mindful and we're being kind, the brain can't take it just cannot be kind and angry at the same time. The brain can't be kind and irritated at the same time. It's not possible. So if you're being kind, we're bringing that, we'll talk a little bit about this more later, about the neural pathways and how we can change them. So we think of mindfulness as a wise, affectionate attention, as a pause, a space before going on to the next thought, the next reaction, the next frustration, or the next to-do thing. Okay. Mindfulness really teaches us to accept, not to let go, but to let be. Okay. To really accept what is happening here right now in this moment. To not resist or reject, because what we resist persists. And it offers us a choice to being able to respond wisely. What is it like not to be mindful? We're either anxious, worrying about the future. We live in the future. We're planning, worrying, doing our to-do lists, right? Even when we're having our morning coffee, or we're worrying about, thinking about the past. Where do you notice yourself living more, in the future or the past? Or are you present? Okay. When we get ourselves hijacked, our mind hijacked into either the future or the past, if you live in the future a little bit too much, note feelings of anxiety. If you notice that your kids are always worrying about what's going to happen in the future, note a sense of anxiousness coming up. If you notice that you're living in the past, I should have done this, I wish I had done this, I wish I hadn't said this, then note a sense of an underlying depression coming in, setting in, okay? Future relates to anxiety, the past relates to a sense of depression. So just notice that. When we're not being mindful, we're also on autopilot mode. Have you ever had this experience where you leave the door and where you lock the door, you go in the car, you get to work, and you're like, how did I get here? I don't even know how I got here. Or you're like, oh, I wonder if I turned the heater off or the stove off, right? So that's autopilot mode. When we're living our life without awareness of our daily thoughts and feelings, okay? We're without awareness of our daily patterns of behavior, okay? I'm behaving the same way every day. I have a patterned, conditioned behavior. We end up living the same life every day. Day one is the same as day two. Our irritations or frustrations, the things we complain about are the same day in and day out, every single day. And we don't notice the undercurrent that lies within us. So in neuroplasticity, there's a saying that says that we say neurons that fire together, wire together, okay? So for example, we grew up knowing that 2 + 2 is 4. So those two neurons, the 2 + 2 is 4, fired together enough times as children that we never forgot them, right? So the neurons that we fire and wire together with our irritations, our frustrations, our complaints, they're also firing and wiring together. So our limbic system, if we react from that part of our brain, also is being conditioned, okay? So for example, if you were to hold a pencil really tight all day long, and you went through all day holding that pencil really tight, initially you would notice the tension, the tightness, right? But suppose you went to sleep with it. And then you woke up and eventually you would stop noticing that it was there, that tension and tightness was there. It would just be like, oh yeah, my wrist is hurting a little bit, or oh, my shoulder feels hurt. You're not letting go of the pencil. And until you stop, notice, pause, going, what is it? Let me check in here. Oh, I'm holding this pencil really tight. I'm holding that stress. We get used to that feeling in that body. We get used to that tension. Okay? So what gets in the way of being calm and mindful on a daily basis? What gets in the way of allowing ourselves to release that pencil daily? So how many of you can relate to anything on here? The yelling, the screaming, the to-do list, right? Constant teaching, training, instructing, getting exhausted from it, right? The headaches. How many of you can relate to it? We get used to this. We get used to holding that stress and tension in our bodies. Yeah, I see a thumbs up. Instead of checking in with what's really happening, what do we say when we get home or somebody says, is everything okay? What's wrong? Oh, I'm just tired. Oh, I have a headache. It's, I don't want to look in. I don't want to look inside my body, what's going on. I don't want to look in. I don't want to inquire what I'm really feeling, I don't want to say what I'm really irritated about. what I'm really overwhelmed about, I'm just going to say I have a headache. Or we distract ourselves. We distract ourselves with food, junk food during my divorce, after it. This was me, bags of chips. I was a stay-at-home mom for a few years. And then all of a sudden, I had to share my kids every second week. When they were gone, I would sit on Friday night with a bag of chips and I would stay up all night because I was so depressed. And that was and then I would wake up the next morning, like literally at noon, right? Because I didn't have my lifeline. And until the Thursday they came back, on Wednesday night, I got myself together. Thursday morning, I'd go shopping. Thursday, I'd cook, I'd clean. And then I was okay for a week again. And then I went down again. So it was this cyclical nature in my life. Okay. And it really got in the way, right? So food, alcohol, shopping, right? Technology, social media, games. I have a sister who lost her daughter 2 years ago. And literally, she plays games on her phone all the time just to distract herself. Okay. So where do you feel it when you're stressed? If I was to ask you, where are you today, right now? Where would you be? Put it in the chat box. Does it change for you? Does it change from a weekday or a weekend? Does it change from a Friday night to a Sunday night? Okay. Do you notice when you're stressed? Or is it in the back of your mind, in the depths of your body? Quite frankly, stress is killing us. It propels us into chronic diseases because what stress does in our body is it changes the physical nature of our cells, and it causes autoimmune issues. It robs us of peace and calm, connection, sleep. So I'll give you an example of one of my clients, and she doesn't express herself when she's irritated or angry. She bottles it all in. So I gave her an example, which we can go through here right now. Just imagine that you're really, really angry and you just want to blow up. Remember the last time you really blew up? You threw something, you were really angry, you expressed it. Okay. What does that anger look like? What color is it? And she said, oh, it's just this deep reddish black. And I said, how much energy does it have in it? She goes, it's got so much energy, it's just like ballooning out. And then I said to her, okay, when you're not expressing yourself and you're swallowing that anger or irritation or frustration, can you imagine how much energy your body is absorbing? Your cells are absorbing. What changes do you think that causes to all your organs and your body? Okay, does that make sense? I'm just going to have a quick look at the chat here. Yeah, exhaustion, inactive. Wow. Okay. All right. So do you remember that pencil I talked about? Highly stressed, but we don't feel it. We don't allow ourselves to feel it. And then I believe you had a session on burnout, right? I think it was yesterday or last week. So you had that session on burnout because that's what happened. It's that straw that breaks. And somebody just says to you, oh, why did you cook that? And all of a sudden you're ignited, right? It wasn't that one statement. It was all the stuff before that. Okay. I'm just going to have a look at the chat again and see. Oh, okay. Example was powerful. Yes. All right. So stress and how it affects us. We know from a theoretical point how stress affects us, but literally it affects. There was one image that I found, and it said affects us here, 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 here. It affects every single part of our body. Okay. It causes fertility problems, type 2 diabetes, skin conditions, hair loss, serious heart problems, migraines and tension. In a short term, the muscles tense up, the skin becomes more sensitive. Okay. It also, from an emotion standpoint, we get irritable. If you notice, you're getting a little more fussier, a little more irritable, more fatigued, eczema, psoriasis, we're drinking more, we're a little bit more restless. We have impaired judgment. We're making hasty decisions, all of those things. So it really infiltrates our entire way of being. So this is what your brain looks like when you're chronically stressed. The normal brain, stressed brain, okay? What happens is our neurons, remember those neurons that are constantly firing and wiring together? All those neurons that you got doing crossword puzzles and Sudoku and all of that, they get pruned, okay? They get pruned so that we can only concentrate on the bare minimum. What do I need to do just to get through this day? Right? Holding that pencil tight. What do I need to do just to get through this day? How many of us feel like that sometimes or on most days? So with mindfulness, the research has shown that we can, with neuroplasticity, they used to say that, when you turn 24, our brain is set. Well, with new research, neuroplasticity, our brains can get those neurons firing and wiring together again, okay? And can alleviate and put aside those Alzheimer's, dementia, all of that research has taken place. And do you remember back in the day when, and some of you don't because you're younger, but back in the day when seatbelts weren't necessary, right? Well, seatbelts are now mandatory. And so they say that by the year 2030, mindfulness will become a part of us because there has been so much research. It's just been ballooning, and all the effects of mindfulness, the positive effects that can come our way, and the health effects. Okay. So in today's context, we're not running away from tigers and lions, right? But standing in a Starbucks line, waiting for your coffee, and somebody is too close, somebody doesn't have their mask on, can create that same limbic response as if you're running away from a tiger or lion. Your brain does not know any differently. So do you remember when I told you my sister lost her daughter? Her daughter just had a baby and then was in a coma for 6 months, and she lost her baby. And so my sister was experiencing so much grief and trauma, of course, right? My offer to her was that every time you think of that, every time that comes in, that wound gets opened up, and your body doesn't know the difference between that day and 3 years from now. You're 3 years later, your body doesn't know the difference. So what you experienced in your body that day is happening again today. So you're causing that stress to happen again and again and again. So we have instances in our brain where we're constantly triggered, right? And the more we react, you remember that neural pathway 2 + 2 = 4? The more we react, the more that pathway is used. And the more it becomes, instead of, oh, this is my state of being right now, it becomes a trait. Okay. Do you know those people that are quite older and we call them, oh, that's just old Ed, he's always upset, right? So that becomes a trait because that neural pathway hasn't had the opportunity to kick itself out and start using the prefrontal cortex. When I talk to kids, I say, this is the alarm part of the brain, like a tiger chasing you. And this is the smart part of the brain, the upstairs brain, the downstairs brain. We want to use our upstairs smart part of the brain, our prefrontal cortex. How do we do that? We take that breath, we take that pause, we engage it. Okay. The more we use this part of the brain, the more our pathways will change. So, this is a normal stress response. A tiger's chasing you, your prefrontal cortex at the bottom, you wake up with that. Limbic system, right? The back end goes, oh, I need to get into survival mode, right? We go up and then we're supposed to come back to baseline again. That's a normal stress response. That's healthy. And then something else happens later on in the afternoon and we come back down. It doesn't take long to come back down. Okay. Stress in the time of COVID. Okay. With all that's happening right now, we don't know what the new normal will look like. We do know that we are uncertain, and our brain doesn't like uncertainty. So unless we pull some certainty back into our lives, like I am standing with my feet on the ground right now, I am holding a pencil, we pull that certainty, I have this, I'm going to do the next right thing, the next best thing for me. Unless we pull that certainty back into our lives, like noticing, pausing, mindful practices, which I'll go into a little bit later, the stress stays and lives with us. It drains us. And it drains us like an open app on our phone, right? And it's draining our battery. So that's what I tell a lot of kids that I work with, that when you're stressed and you don't recognize it, and I tell parents, it's like that app is draining your battery. So we're living in this low level stress. Remember that stress that we don't even think we have stress. We're perfectly fine, but we're holding that pencil. Okay. So I showed you what a normal stress response looks like. This is what a chronic stress response looks like. You wake up in the morning, normal baseline, and then kids don't eat breakfast, or there's a bowl of cereal that's dropped on the floor. They don't have their homework done. Something sets you off and you get stressed. And then before you can even come down fully to the baseline, you hit traffic and you're running late, and then your stress goes up. And then there's a Starbucks line, right? And then at work, somebody says something to you, right? And then before you can come down, you come down a little bit more because it's lunchtime and maybe you've had something to eat, you've replenished, but you haven't come down fully because you were still thinking about what there is to do, what meals are being planned. Okay. And then you're on the way to the grocery store, there's a lineup, and then you pick kids up from school and you say, how was your day? Because you want to connect. And they say, fine. And that sets you off. But guess what? Your kids have woken up with some sort of a baseline if they slept well. They feel your energy in the morning because our energy leaks out of us, even with our fake smile and okay, let's go with gritted teeth, right? They can feel our energy. So their limbic system is activated. Ooh, okay, I hear a tone here, because they can hear it more than we can. And then they go to school, they get pushed or they get bullied. Somebody doesn't play with them. They don't understand this, what's happening at school, or they can't, grasp a math concept, or somebody makes fun of their t-shirt, right? They're living that stress. They're worrying about their birth parents. Something knocks them into a state of trauma. Okay. And they're living up there. And then you say, how was your day? And they say, fine. And you say, why don't you tell me about your day? And they get activated. And then there's a fight. And then you get home in the evening and things are again at that limbic system. And how do you all go to bed? do you think anybody gets a decent night's sleep? Rested, right? And then we've created this new baseline that we're living with, that's stress. So as we've said, we have COVID, we have other stresses, and then parenting for you provides unique stresses, right? You're under stress and you're dealing with the ministry, birth parents, other childhood complex issues, and you are juggling multiple demands, right? And how do your best parenting intentions get hijacked when you're under stress? So if you think about it, here's a balloon. I'm going to blow it out. This is, okay, I'm not feeling anything. I'm just so burnt out. I'm just limp. Okay. That's your balloon. Okay. Baseline. Now you add stress to it, the balloon's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. With mindfulness, so if we repeat our patterns, we get ignited, our buttons get pushed, right? That chronic stress response, our limbic system gets hijacked, and it's like that woman blowing the balloon. And I don't think I'll make that face, but so it gets bigger and bigger and bigger until we burst, right? So just to show you something, if you add a mindful practice during your day, add it every hour, for example. Oh, I'll take a little breath here. You release some air, right? So that if something happens there's an illness or somebody falls or child has a tantrum, guess what? This area here is the resilience. It allows us to be able to bring a little bit more energy into our life, to be able to deal with things. Okay. All right, so I think I missed one. So we have the freeze, and you've heard of these, and I'm just going to quickly go over this. We have the fight, flight, freeze response. So we fight, we get angry, we get irritated, we get frustrated, we flight, right? I don't want to talk about this, right? I'm just going to shut the door. I can't deal with this. Or we freeze, stonewall. Have you seen if you've ever been angry at your child and you're yelling and yelling and yelling and you're saying, but, and you're repeating yourself? I'm constantly seeing the backpack in the hallway. You need to pick it up. And your child is just looking at you like this, not saying a word, but you know what he's thinking, right? Or she. That's the freeze response. If I say something, I'll get in trouble. It's actually protecting them. It's a protection factor, because if I say something, I'm going to get in trouble. Cannot deal with this bear or tiger right now, right? Or there's a fourth one, the fawn response. Okay, over pleasing, lacking boundaries, right? Having a hard time saying no, feeling a lack of self-esteem, a lack of identity. Who am I really? Okay, taking advantage of relationships, appeasing. Okay, that's the fawn response. And we all know people like that go over and beyond what is needed of them, because everything needs to be perfect. Okay. And we start parenting. And we start parenting when we're stressed from a place of control instead of a place of concern. When we parent from the right brain, and I talked to Michelle about this earlier, that there's a whole workshop on this that I do. When we parent from a sense of control from our right brain, then we start seeing shifts in our parenting. Okay, but we can't parent from that place if we're trying to control ourselves, if we're trying to keep it together. Okay, so here's a short, I'm going to take a pause and I'll offer you that you take that deep pause, just relax your body because that's a lot of information. And I'm just going to leave this parenting exercise up for a couple minutes. Just check in the chat and see if there's anything. If there are any questions, please, any comments, questions, please put them in the chat. When we're parenting, do you complete your child's sentences? Do you assume why they didn't eat lunch that day? You know, if you don't study and if you don't start now, you're never going to get it done. Do you, or if you're in a restaurant, do you look at a menu and start when the waitress comes and or the waiter comes, do you say, oh, yeah, he or she will have this, this, and this. What do you want to drink? Oh, she'll just have water, without allowing them to answer. So when you pick up your child, do you ask? And again, that's a whole other workshop, attachment parenting, connection parenting. Do you ask, how was your day? Where they can only say, oh my God, I don't want to get through my day. Or do you say, anything interesting or funny happened today? And they might say nothing, but you ask that question every single day. And guess what their brain's going to do the next day they go to work? You're priming their brain. The next day they go to school, they're going to be looking for funny things because they want to connect with you as parents. So they'll be going, oh, that was funny. Okay, I'll remember that. So after about 3 or 4 days, when it feels not weird that, why are you asking me if anything funny or interesting happened today? They will start going, oh yeah, one funny thing did happen. Okay. Ask them, how did your friends do in this test? What did your friend get? Okay. Do you get attached to the friend's situation or playground challenges and offer opinions or try and fix it? Kids need autonomy. They need to feel like I can be in control, but that you can be that potted plant that I can water. I want you there, but I also want to feel a sense of control. Okay, that's just a quick parenting awareness exercise. So how can mindfulness bring us back to the intentions that we had? There's a quote by Viktor Frankl. He was an Auschwitz survivor, and this is a powerful quote. Between stimulus and response, so when something happens and the response we give, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom, right? So when we stop and pause, we can choose how we're going to respond to ourselves. Do we let our inner critic take over? I'm a bad parent, I can't do this, I'm a bad worker, I'm a bad partner. Do we let our inner critic take over? Or do we pause and choose the response that promotes kindness and self-care? Okay. There's this Jill Bolte Taylor's memoir. She had a stroke, and in the stroke of insight, she knows, I'm just going to read this out. Bring you guys down here. She knows that the physiological lifespan of an emotion in the body and brain is 90 seconds. The sensations, adrenaline, heat in the face, tightness in the throat, the rapid heartbeat, they arise, peak, and dissipate on their own. Okay. It takes 90 seconds to allow that. Now, that's if I don't attach a story to it. So I don't call my girlfriend, my mother, my partner, my sister, and say, do you know what happened? This is what happened. And I keep repeating the story. I keep traumatizing myself with that story, right? If I allow it, it will peak. That anger, that frustration, I take 90 seconds and it will dissipate. Okay. Mindfulness changes our brain. It's good for our minds. It helps us focus. It fosters compassion. It enhances relationships. It helps parents, schools, bodies. It's a good thing. Try to move you guys again. Okay. This is what a normal person's brain looks like in a brain scan. 15 minutes. So the blue, the purpley blue area, the back of the limbic brain, it's kind of almost a third of the way in. So that's highly activated for us, okay? And we're prone to anxiety and depression. After 15 minutes of just staying calm, right? Just breathing, the brain hemispheres, you can see now they're like symmetry. They have some symmetry, okay? The purple area has dissipated a little bit, right? And the prefrontal cortex has been activated. And after 25 minutes, look at the symmetry. Okay, practicing mindfulness in daily life. How can this happen? Let's stop for a moment. What's the weather like inside you now? I asked this question at the beginning. And if you've been breathing, and if your neurons have been firing, you might be feeling a little bit hopeful, a little bit centered, a little bit grounded. Okay. A little bit like, oh, there's an opportunity here for learning. Mindfulness heightens that body awareness. It quiets the thinking mind. And when an external stimulus comes in and triggers our emotional reaction, the attention system detects conflict. Okay. You can't stop the waves. Things will come at you, right? Things will come at you all the time. And as parents and as foster parents, you know that you're constantly fighting fires. You're constantly dealing with things, but you can learn to surf. Okay. And I say this to kids, that every day at school, there will always be something that happens. But if you can be grounded and centered, you can be the same person you are with your friends, this group and this group and this group, and not put that mask on and change the mask everywhere you go, right? A different mask for foster parents, a different mask for birth parents, a different mask for this friend, a different mask for that friend. And that takes energy. But when you're grounded and centered, you build that self-esteem, okay? And you can really feel your authentic self coming out. So the weather inside. What happens with informal meditation, which is the daily life mindfulness, right? And with formal meditation, and whether you have 1 minute or 50 minutes, it changes your life. And that's a powerful statement, but it really shifts the brain. Okay. So what happens is when the stimulus comes in, something triggers you, an emotional reaction comes up, the attention system detects a conflict. Oh, there's conflict here. And then there's a heightened body awareness, which helps to detect the physiological aspects. So mindfulness of the body, because typically we're walking around with our mind and not our body. So we bring our mind back to our body. What's happening inside? Is there tension? Is my heartbeat going up? Is my breath short and shallow? When you notice that, just noticing, just paying attention to what's happening in your body is the first foundation of mindfulness. Just that simple act of noticing, the pausing versus actively reacting, instead of like being quick to react. Our body, when paused, when checked in with, acts like an internal barometer. Okay. And this mindful attention activates the emotional regulation process. You know how you hear about emotional regulation in schools? So this process is to respond to whatever is happening, whatever happened, the stimulus, differently than we normally would. So if our normal conditioned way of responding is to react, to lecture, to instruct, to slam a door, to eat, what we do is we're kicking ourselves out of that conditioned response. And the conditioning goes back from generations, right? We parent the way we were parented. So when we kick ourselves out of that reaction, we respond differently than we normally would. And we break the harmful patterns which lead to chronic illness. Okay, informal practices. I'm going to go through some informal practices. Everybody is different. Something will click with you that you can take today. Okay, you can take a screenshot of this. It will be later up on YouTube. So the whole idea is to add a mindfulness habit to an established habit. So if you drink coffee every morning, take that coffee, breathe it in, smell it, and release. Just that one mindful habit in that morning, and then do it during the day. And guess what? You don't need a 50-minute meditation practice. Just those little bits add up, and it trains your brain constantly to go, oh, okay, I'm here. I'm paused. I'm paying attention. Mindful eating. When you're having rice, right? Think about, oh, I wonder who stocked the shelf. Because that's this moment, right? Oh, I wonder who packaged this. I wonder about the people who packaged it. Wonder who picked it. So you go back, right? I wonder who picked that apple. I wonder what that family is like. And you send loving kindness to them for having that apple at your table. We model the behavior we want to see with our children as well. Another practice that I do all the time, and I have done for 15 years now, and with my kids, is every time I'm at a stop sign or a red light, I take a breath. At a red light, I take longer breaths. And I go, oh, I'm going to stop at this stop sign and just take my breath. So I'm modeling the behavior I want to see with my kids. And it allows me to take that pause. So my brain, which is going on about what I'm doing the rest of the day, comes back to my body, right? So there's cues throughout the house. I have a water bottle I fill, and when I fill that water bottle, I take a breath. When you're waiting in line. Compassion practice is a powerful, informal meditation practice. So when somebody cuts me off while I'm driving, right, instead of getting angry or irritated, which I used to do, truth, now what I say, and my kids are in the seat, and I'm like, oh, I hope you get home safely. Guess what they're learning? And if I'm being kind, I'm not being angry. My brain can't do both at once. And I feel good. I send them a loving kindness. If you see somebody trying to cross the street, right, with a cane, I send them may you get home safely. If I see somebody laughing, may you always have joy in your life. Okay. The next one is coming to our senses practice, which, I'm going to go back here. I'm going to add a few more. Brushing teeth in the morning instead of rushing through, right? Feeling how it feels like. When you're taking a shower, right? How many people are in the shower with you? How many people are in the shower with you when you're taking a shower? Your boss, your children. What did I say on that email? The ministry, right? How many people are you talking to in the shower? I invite you to take a shower by yourself. Feel that water, okay? Feel that soap. Cooking, cutting strawberries, smelling it, right? Peeling an orange, really be there, peel the orange. Coming to our senses practice. So this is a really powerful grounding practice. So when I lost my niece, I would be gripped with grief and loss. So this practice really helped me. And that was coming to my senses, 5 things I see. And I'm sure some of you would probably have heard of this. So as soon as I got gripped with panic or despair or grief, I would come to my senses, 5 things I see. And you can look around right now, 5 things you see. I see the leaves. I see the computer screen. I see my water. I see my notes. I see my desk. 4 things you hear. I hear silence. I hear a car, my voice, the heater. 3 things you feel. I feel the desk. I feel the material. I feel the hair. 2 things you smell. I smell the coffee. I smell the sage in my room right now, the lavender. 1 thing I taste. I had some coffee, so I can taste that coffee. When I've done this, it takes 90 seconds. I've had parents come back to me and say, Shahin, it works. I was so mad at my sister and I did this and it worked. It's the grounding practice. The other one is a 4 square practice, which I teach. It's for PTSD. We use it for people experiencing PTSD. And it's taking a deep breath in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. And what I teach kids is they could have a book before an exam. They can use that at their desk, right? Okay, so breath as an anchor. So that's your anchor. You know, that anchor, that boat that would go away, the mind that goes away if we're not anchored. So we use breath as an anchor. So you can choose your anchor. The other one is sound, right? I often use a sound bath. So you can go on YouTube and Google sound bath. And it's what that looks like on the bottom right-hand corner. And you just, because sometimes breath is hard for us, right? If we've had some trauma, then accessing our breath can be hard. So we use sound. So we just pay attention to the sound. We bring the mind and body into the sound. And 5 mindful minutes. I'm just going to take a break here, just a deep breath. And if you want to chat, any questions in the chat, and I will answer them because we're heading to the end here. Each time you focus on your breath, return to your breath. You're building your concentration. So the more you do it during the day, the more you're activating your prefrontal cortex, and the more you're going, oh, okay, instead of from here, I'm responding from here. Okay, you're letting go when really you're letting be. Okay, each time you notice your mind wandering, that is a moment of mindfulness, not failure. Oh, my mind went off to 10 days or Christmas. Okay, let me bring it back here today. Each time you're kind to yourself and to others, instead of criticizing yourself, you're exercising self-compassion, which is a key tenet of mindfulness, loving kindness. Each time you notice your mind wandering, that is an opportunity for insight into your minds. All right. I won't do the guided meditation because unless you want to or you have time, I'm happy to do it. Put it in the chat box. I'll see. Anybody? Nobody? Okay. All right, then. I know you have lots of things to do, so maybe we just end here with a quiet, mindful moment, taking a deep breath in. And as we end here, let's offer loving kindness to all those suffering in ill health, needing food, needing shelter, needing warmth. May they be cared for. May they feel safe. May they be safe. Thank you for joining me here today. I appreciate your presence, your grounding, your intention to learn and be with me today. I hope at least you've taken one thing out of here that that supports you in your journey.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you.